Welcome back to Disturbed Reality. In recent days, tension between the USA and the South American country of Venezuela have been growing following the precision strikes of two supposed drug trafficking boats, the first event killing 11 alleged traffickers and the second killing 3. The USA's decision to take a hands-on, more aggressive approach in the war on drugs has been threatened in recent months, with numerous cartels across Mexico and Latin America being designated terror organizations. Such organizations include Mexican cartels such as CJNG and the Sinaloa Cartel, but also Venezuelan gangs like Tren de Aragua. Posturing and tough rhetoric aside, however, we have now seen the first actions of its new, more aggressive and militaristic approach to tackling the drug problem. Following the strike on the first drug boat, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who is also accused of drug trafficking, responded to the USA's militaristic move. He said that Caracas would defend itself against US aggression, calling America's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, the Lord of Death and War. Trump responded after the second attack. This morning, on my orders, US military forces conducted a second kinetic strike against positively identified, extraordinarily violent drug trafficking cartels and narco-terrorists. These extremely violent drug trafficking cartels pose a threat to US national security. Naturally, these actions caused much debate within the political sphere. On one side, the actions were praised as initiative, precise, and ultimately good for national security, whereas the other side critiqued the strikes, labelling them essentially as extrajudicial, and that those on board deserved their day in court. Some even went as far as equating the strikes to war crimes. Me personally, I see positives and negatives. On one side, I think the days of libertarian thinking has run its course. Sometimes national security takes precedent over feel-good gesticulation. Ultimately, if those on the two trafficking boats were indeed smugglers, then quite frankly, the substances that they were peddling serves to destabilise the United States via potential overdoses that destroy family, as well as fueling inner-city crime, which also takes countless lives. What about the rights of your average law-abiding citizen, who is already being squeezed via the cost of living crisis? I think the least we can ask is to live in a somewhat of a safe environment. So the strikes in and of themselves, I don't actually have a problem with, especially considering they were conducted at sea, where there was no risk of collateral damage. It is worth noting, if such strikes were to be carried out in densely populated areas, then I would feel differently. I do, however, have one massive concern. Following these strikes and the prior designation of various cartel groups across Latin America as terror organizations, and that being that it could be a Trojan horse for yet more war, could it potentially turn into this generation's war on terror, which in and of itself was a colossal failure and, in my opinion, a scam, where the costs of it are still being felt to this very day on both sides of the globe? When the US government began flirting with the idea of designating certain Latin American drug cartels as terrorist organizations, it seemed, at least on the surface, like an extension of the war on drugs. After all, the cartels were increasingly militarized, destabilizing entire regions and linked to shocking levels of violence. But beneath this narrative, some argue that the move was never really about cocaine, fentanyl, or border security. Instead, it was about Venezuela and the possibility of manufacturing legal and political justification for regime change against Nicolas Maduro. By labelling drug cartels as terrorist organizations, Washington wasn't simply changing rhetoric. Terror designations unlock a powerful set of tools: expanded surveillance powers, financial sanctions, military targeting authority, and perhaps, the most important, the ability to justify cross-border operations under the banner of counter-terrorism. This is key. Fighting drugs is messy, legally limited, and largely domestic. Fighting terrorists is global, flexible, and legitimized under the post-9/11 framework of the war on terror. Venezuela under Nicolas Maduro has long been accused by US intelligence agencies of harboring narco-trafficking networks, including the so-called Cartel of the Suns, a shadowy structure allegedly tied to high-ranking Venezuelan military officials. The conspiracy narrative runs like this. By linking Venezuelan officials and Maduro's inner circle to cartels designated as terrorists, Washington creates a pretext for treating Caracas itself as a state sponsor of terrorism. Once that line is crossed, regime change moves from being a geopolitical wish to a matter of national security. Ordinarily, direct US military intervention against a foreign government is a hard sell domestically and internationally. But if that government is seen as harbouring or aiding terrorists, the door swings wide open. Congress, the Pentagon, and even reluctant allies are far more likely to support decisive action. Think of it as an Iraq Playbook 2.0. Just as weapons of mass destruction were used as a justification for the invasion in 2003, narco-terrorism could be the rhetorical key to legitimizing moves against Maduro. Why Maduro? Why Venezuela? Well, the answer is oil. Venezuela holds some of the largest proven reserves on Earth, but under Maduro's government, those reserves remain locked away from Western corporations, but are increasingly tied to Russia, China, and Iran. If the Maduro regime were to be replaced by a government friendlier to Washington, the US could secure not just energy access, but also choke off one of the few remaining socialist experiments in the hemisphere. To those who see conspiracies everywhere, the narco-terror designation looks less like law enforcement and more like an energy war dressed in anti-drug rhetoric. Finally, designating cartels as terrorists serves another purpose. It reframes public perception. Americans, tired of endless wars, may not support another intervention in Latin America, but fighting terrorists has a different psychological weight. It activates fear, urgency, and even the memory of 9/11. In that sense, cartel violence is not just framed as a foreign threat, it's a national security emergency requiring bold action. From this conspiratorial perspective, the US designation of drug cartels as terror organizations is much less about Mexico or Colombia, but more about Venezuela. It's a chess move, one piece in a larger strategy to erode Maduro's legitimacy, justify harsher sanctions, and if the stars align, prepare the legal groundwork for intervention. Whether this intervention takes the form of covert operations, proxy forces, or direct military strikes, the conspiracy theory suggests that the goal is clear: remove Maduro, secure the oil, and reassert US dominance in its own backyard, all under the familiar banner of fighting terrorism. So again, for me, my main concern is that this more aggressive approach to tackling drug cartels and narco-traffickers may actually be a Trojan horse to push certain geopolitical goals. Considering the track record in recent years of US foreign policy, and by extension their allies, I think it is perfectly fair to be skeptical on the strikes against Venezuelan traffickers, and the fact that the focus is primarily on Venezuela rather than Mexico. I think that may be very telling in and of itself. Despite the media and US government being focused on Venezuela, the blood continues to flow in Mexico nevertheless, at an alarming rate. The Sinaloa cartel civil war between Los Chapitos and La Maíza continues to rage on, and the costs of this war are now starting to be realised. Since the civil war kicked off in September of 2024, the year since has resulted in the deaths of 1,850 people, but this figure doesn't include those who are missing, so it's likely that the number of the dead is far higher. It is still hard to gauge what side is winning the war, but most analysts seem to believe that La Maíza have the current advantage, as they have more control in Culiacan and also have more law enforcement in their pockets. It seems like Los Chapitos, led by the two remaining three sons of El Chapo, Jesus Alfredo Guzman and Ivan Guzman, are the Mexican law enforcement's biggest priority. Their faction of the Sinaloa cartel have been suffering more arrests of high-ranking lieutenants and security chiefs, whereas La Maíza have suffered less from arrests. Both sides have made alliances. Los Chapitos, in a viral video, announced an alliance with CJNG, but they have also been getting the support of Ariano Guzman Lorea, aka El Guano, the brother of El Chapo. El Guano, who is the uncle of Jesus Alfredo and Ivan Guzman, hasn't always seen eye to eye with his nephews, but in their time of need, he has lent his support in their war effort with La Maíza. El Guano runs a faction known as Gente del Guano, and although he is far more low-key than his brother, he still has sway in the Mexican underworld, as well as access to capable groups of Sicarios. La Maíza, on the other hand, formed an alliance with Fausto Isidro Meza Flores, aka Chapo Isidro, the leader of Los Mazatlecos, a small regional cartel who have been one of the main beneficiaries of the Sinaloa cartel civil war. Since the conflict kicked off, Los Mazatlecos and Chapo Isidro have gained more power in Sinaloa state, so much so that Chapo Isidro made the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, a list that even the likes of El Mencho and Ivan Guzman have not appeared on. In recent weeks, La Maíza have also activated one of their most feared enforcement cells, known as Los Rusos, who are led by longtime Mayo Zambada affiliate Juan Jose Ponce Felix, aka Los Russo. Ponce Felix garnered this nickname due to his love of Russian weaponry and Soviet weaponry. The presence of Los Rusos have improved La Maíza's war efforts against Los Chapitos, as Los Rusos' territory is that of Baja California state, a vitally important border state. They primarily operate in Mexicali, which is a key Mexican border city with the USA, and whilst Los Rusos control this area, La Maíza can peddle their drugs north, ensuring profits and funds for their war effort against Los Chapitos. Ultimately, La Maíza seem to be getting the better of the battles on the ground, and they have been going on the offensive, trying to kill as many Chapito commandos as possible. For example, in a video released in recent days, it shows the aftermath of a brutal killing, meant to be a message directed towards El Tío, who is a commander for Los Chapitos. He essentially leads groups of Sicarios in the Culiacan area. In the video, you are met with the shocking sight of a mutilated body that has been beheaded, dismembered and gutted. The corpse was left with a message that read the following: Walter and Christian, hitmen from Tío in Module 5, the Culiacan Penitentiary. Keep recruiting these people, you bunch of idiots, and we'll continue to finish them. Here's your Kevin. We've already located those from Toledo. Damn, I'm going to leave you like this, you son of a bitch. We're going to continue killing you off, you Prior to this latest video that mentions El Tío, a few weeks back another similar video was released detailing the execution of an alleged Sicario belonging to El Tío and Los Chapitos. But nevertheless, what happens in the actual video? On the 4th of September 2025, Jonathan Ignacio, aka El Pajoso, was reported missing by his family. It was reported that an armed commando of La Maíza kidnapped El Pajoso alongside his brother while sleeping in his home in the Cedros sector in Culiacan, Sinaloa. El Pajoso was targeted specifically as in the weeks prior to his murder, he starred in your regular cartel propaganda video where he, among other Sicarios, directed threats to both La Maíza as well as their ally in Chapo Isidro. It is unclear whether Jonathan Ignacio's brother was also killed. If he was, his body seemingly wasn't left in the same location as his brother's. El Pajoso formerly worked as a hitman for Jorge Humberto Figueroa Benitez, aka El Paris, and was currently a hitman of El Tío, a high-ranking member of the Los Chapitos group. Shortly after El Pajoso's death, his dismembered body was found in black plastic bags in Culiacan. The video in question is 1 minute and 48 seconds in length. As you play the video, you are shown footage of what appears to be members of Los Chapitos, possibly including El Pajoso himself, and the footage shows the gang members spray painting over graffiti dedicated to Chapo Isidro and La Maíza. Think of a mission in GTA San Andreas tagging up the turf, where you have to spray paint over the ballers' tags. The video then jump cuts after a few seconds, and you see the victim, Jonathan Ignacio, aka El Pajoso, sitting on the ground, shirtless and dishevelled. His hands seem to be tied behind his back, and it's clear that he was roughed up prior to recording. The setting is that of a rural wooded area, and it takes place during the dead of night. The victim is illuminated by a flashlight that is constantly shone in his face. The beginning of the video is a usual cartel interrogation, with the interrogator's voice being distorted so that the feds cannot recognise it. The interrogation goes as follows. The Sicario asks, "What is your name?" The captive replies, "Jonathan." "What's your moniker?" the Sicario presses. El Pajoso, the captive replies. Where were you captured, the Sicario asks. Jonathan replies, in the Prados del Cedros neighbourhood. By who exactly, the Sicario asks. The Maíza mob, Jonathan replies. The Sicario presses, who are you depending on for support out here? Captive replies, El Malacho, El Tío. The Sicario then abruptly concludes, we've already reinforced the northern part of Culiacan, so just go ahead and come on out for that armed confrontation, you fucks. Tío Malacho, where is all your bravery now? Eleve, Moral, and Texas, I'm going to fucking destroy you guys. The same goes for every Chapito operative from the Chapo's mob who ends up in jail or is killed off. We're eventually going to kick you fucks out of this city. It's in your best interest for you fuckers not to be supporting these Chapitos anymore. During the Sicario's closing statement, another hitman wanders into shot and holds a machete against the captive's throat, ready to go, and by cartel standards, the blade looks incredibly sharp. It looks brand new. As the interrogator finishes his statement, a narco corrido begins to play, and at this point, the hitman with the machete slowly drags the blade across the captive's throat, and he does it deliberately slow by the looks of it. The captive then slowly collapses onto his back. The hitman then forces the palm of his hand down onto the captive's face to pin him down, and he again takes the machete and slices it across the victim's throat, and this causes the victim to kick and thrash frantically, but the second cut with the machete caused insane damage. It looked like the Sicario severed the carotid arteries as the flow of blood increases dramatically. You can literally hear it flow out of his body. Despite the thrashing and kicking from the victim, he soon slows down due to the blood loss. For a split second, you actually see that there's another captive who still appears to be alive laying down. You only see him for a brief second, so I assume this to be the victim's brother. Imagine seeing your own brother go out like that. The Sicario lets the victim bleed for a second before he then grabs the captive by the hair, and he begins to gently tap the machete blade into the gash that he's already made. And at this point, you see just how sharp the blade actually is. In just a few light taps with the blade, it totally cuts through the spinal cord, and you then see the hitman slice through the remaining flesh, completing the bloody beheading in an incredibly short time. The bloody head is then left on the corpse before it rolls off. The video then jump cuts, and it then shows a clip of, I believe, the Mexican military cordoning off an area. It's footage of the victim's body being discovered by authorities. In the top left corner of the screen, you see a still image of a black plastic bag with a severed arm protruding from it. The video ends here, and that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it, if you can enjoy this sort of content. I appreciate the start of the video was a little conspiratorial, but, you know, given the nature of foreign policy and foreign conflicts in recent years, I can't help but not go down that path. But I felt it appropriate to talk about these strikes in Venezuela. I just worry that it's a potential Trojan horse for ulterior goals, I would say. But who knows, maybe I'm just a crazy conspiracy theorist. But anyway guys, as always, thank you for the support, it's much appreciated. Links to my other socials will be in the pinned comment as always. And yeah, if you could check those out, that would be much appreciated. But anyway, as always, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.